Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive historical enigma. We're going to look at how a man who never utters a single word in the entire Bible somehow became the subject of profound archaeological study, ancient legends, and even a dedicated theological science. We are, of course, talking about St. Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus. He is an absolute mystery. I mean, think about it. How does someone so incredibly silent leave such a massive footprint on human history? To figure that out, we're going to peel back the layers of this fascinating guy through 5 distinct lenses: the silent biblical figure, a first-century builder, the apocryphal legends, the science of Josephology, and finally, his role as the patron of a happy death. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the silent biblical figure. What do the canonical texts actually reveal to us?
So the biographical details, they're incredibly sparse, but they do paint a really clear picture of a devout working-class protector who faced some immense trials. We know he was a descendant of King David's royal line from the tribe of Judah. He was a strict observer of the Mosaic law, which meant traveling all the way to Jerusalem for the Passover. He also received 4 distinct dreams from angels guiding him to protect his family. And we know he was likely quite poor. When offering a sacrifice at the temple, he brought turtle doves, which was the specific offering prescribed for families who literally couldn't afford a lamb. Finally, he lived at least until Jesus was 12 years old, famously losing him in the temple for 3 days, which early writers compared to tasting hell on earth, and then he completely disappears from the biblical narrative.
And this brings us to a brilliant paradox about his character. You see, his total silence in the text suggests an aura of deep contemplation rather than just a simple absence. Pope John Paul II famously noted that this silence has its own special eloquence. It wasn't just a lack of words, it was a testament to his profound inner life, and a mind completely focused on action and obedience. Moving right along to Section 2, a first-century builder. Let's look at the archaeological reality of his hometown, because dirt and archaeology entirely recontextualize his life in first-century Galilee. The actual Greek language used to describe his profession is super fascinating. The word in the New Testament is tekton. Now, we usually translate this as carpenter, but it much more accurately means craftsman, artisan, or skilled builder. Redefining him as a tekton places him right in the middle of a massive architectural building boom under King Herod the Great. Herod was constantly building amphitheaters, public baths, and monuments. The region was prosperous, and skilled laborers like Joseph would have been in very high demand, working heavily with the local limestone. This architectural reality builds a radical new perspective on labor itself. You really have to contrast the Greco-Roman disdain for manual labor with the Jewish elevation of work as a holy priestly task rooted in the book of Genesis. In the Greek world, philosophers like Socrates and Aristotle thought that mechanics and laborers couldn't even practice virtue, but the Jewish worldview saw work as inherently good. In Genesis, Adam is told to till and keep the garden, using the exact same Hebrew words used to describe the sacred duties of priests in the tabernacle. So, Joseph's daily labor as a builder was seen as a holy act of sacrifice. And the archaeology shows a stark cultural divide between the cosmopolitan, relaxed city of Sepphoris and the strict, ritually pure, quarrying community of Nazareth where Joseph actually lived. When surveying the dirt, archaeologists found that Sepphoris was deeply Hellenized and wealthy, with residents casually discarding domestic waste on their fields. But right next door in Nazareth, the evidence shows strict Second Temple Jewish observance. They used ritually pure limestone vessels and ran stone quarries. This tells us Joseph lived in a very conservative, devout environment, which completely dismantles modern theories like the cynic Jesus hypothesis that suggests Jesus was influenced by Greek philosophy. Nope. He grew up in a strict, working-class Jewish village. All right, Section 3, the Apocryphal legends, filling the narrative gaps. Human nature absolutely abhors a vacuum. So let's examine how early Christians used literature to answer burning questions about his hidden life. To fill in these gaps, early Christians turned to some really fascinating apocryphal texts. The 6th or 7th century History of Joseph the Carpenter framed him as an older widower with children from a previous marriage. This was a super clever literary device because it neatly explained biblical references to Jesus' brothers without compromising later theological doctrines. This text, which is framed as a homily given by Jesus on the Mount of Olives, details Joseph's decades of raising his foster son and claims he lived to the highly symbolic age of 111. What's really captivating here is how vulnerable this makes him. This text uniquely portrays Joseph as an old man terrified of his own passing, mourning his unaccomplished life until he is finally comforted. Jesus ultimately promises to preserve Joseph's body from corruption. It's a beautifully complex mixture of ancient literary genres that shows just how deeply early Christians cared about Joseph's postmortem fate and his very human anxieties.
Which leads us to Section 4, the science of Josephology. Yes, it's a real science with a massive theological footprint. Let's look at how these early traditions evolved into a specialized academic discipline.
This theology built up steadily over centuries. We see the very first formal devotions popping up around 800 AD in northern France. By the 13th century, the great thinker Thomas Aquinas was analyzing Joseph's absolutely necessary role in protecting Mary and Jesus. Heavyweight saints like Teresa of Avila famously attributed her recovery of health directly to him. This momentum kept building until 1889, when Pope Leo XIII issued an encyclical dedicated to him. And incredibly, by the 1950s, this culminated in formal, specialized research centers in Montreal, Spain, and Italy. It is literally one of the newest formal disciplines in theology. How cool is that?
Pope Francis's 2020 apostolic letter, Patris Corde, beautifully summarizes this modern view of his legacy, a tender, hidden presence operating in the shadows of salvation history. Written during the height of a global pandemic, the Pope compared Joseph to the ordinary doctors, nurses, grocery store clerks, and cleaning personnel who quietly kept the world running. It is a profound recognition that you really don't need to be in the spotlight to be a crucial part of history. Finally, Section 5, Patron of a Happy Death. Let's connect all of this rich history and theology to the tangible, vibrant cultural traditions practiced around the world today.
The Feast of St. Joseph's Day, celebrated as a solemnity on March 19th, brings his story to life through deeply sensory traditions. People wear red clothing, assemble elaborate home altars covered in flowers and statues, and share specially blessed bread. There's also this amazing tradition originating in Sicily of hosting large communal feasts and even carrying fava beans. Fava beans are carried as a symbol of good luck and prosperity, tracing back to a legend where the beans literally saved the local population from starvation during a severe drought.
So, the legend goes that because he died peacefully in the arms of Jesus and Mary, he became the ultimate patron of a happy death. It addresses the universal human fear of the end, the immense comfort of being surrounded by those you love most, and finally transitioning in total peace. For centuries, people have turned to his example, praying for his intercession so that they too might face the end of their lives not with fear, but with the exact same quiet comfort and peace that he allegedly experienced.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. How does a guy who left literally 0 words leave the loudest legacy of human labor and fatherhood? From the strict stone-quarrying village of Nazareth to ancient apocryphal legends, all the way to modern theological research centers, St. Joseph reminds us that sometimes the most profound historical and theological impact comes from the absolute quietest corners of history. Thanks for learning with me today, and keep questioning the silence.